And moving forward, just so excited for us to have our amazing presenting sponsors, because without you, this show would not go on, as we say in show business, right? So again, thanks so much to these presenting sponsors that you see here on the screen now. Julia Patrick called me up 100 plus shows ago and said, I have this crazy idea. So Julia is the CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And if you have not checked out that website, there is a smorgasbord of information, insight, national news thread, so much information on the American Nonprofit Academy website right there.
Awesome.
And myself here, Jarrett Ransom, also known as the Nonprofit Nerd, CEO of the Raven Group. So again, thank you so much for everyone who's joined us on a Friday and has joined us several times this week. As you may have picked up now, every Friday we have scheduled an Asked and Answered. And this is a wonderful opportunity for those of you watching live. Again, on this Friday, we do encourage questions. Live questions. So at the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A. And so if you have any question for us, particularly in the nonprofit sector, although if you want to know where we got our clothes or get our hair done, you're more than welcome to ask that. But specifically in the nonprofit sector, this is a great time to ask your questions live. And for these questions that we also will be asked and answered today, many of these have come to us during our show across some previous episodes. We also get a lot of questions via email. So a lot of the questions that you're going to hear during this Asked and Answered show have been sent in to us. Right. So Julia, let's get going.
Okay, before we get going, I have two announcements. One is we have promoted Kevin Pace to executive producer of the nonprofit show. Round of applause.
Yeah. Well deserved. Well deserved.
He is the man that you never see him, you never hear him, except before we get started. But he has really helped us. And today, Kevin Pace, I'm going to ask you to turn down the studio air because it's really hot in here. So let's see if you have earned this grand promotion. That's all.
All right, let's see if you'll keep it.
Yeah, oh my God. Whew, Nelly. Okay, Asked and Answered. We got a bunch of questions. And so let's hit it, sister.
You did two things. That was one.
You what?
You said you had two things, and
two things. One, it's the announcement that he's now our executive producer, and two, turn down the frickin' air.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm just like, I'm perspiring like a bad woman in church. That's the cleaned up version.
Boy, May.
I know. Okay. So this is one thing that it's funny. This is a question that came in from Pamela from Boston. And it's funny because I think I kind of asked you this question yesterday. And it said, Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd, mentioned the concept ROR. And she briefly discussed it, return on relationship, I think. Could she talk about it more? Because we are all worried about ROI.
Absolutely. So yes, ROR stands for that return on relationship. And it may not be as quantifiable as some other goals and, focused objectives. However, what we have seen over the last, 90, 120 days during this pandemic is that your return on relationship really does marry that return on investment. So building and taking time to steward your donors, your constituents, your supporters, and truly even your staff, right? Is you see or should be seeing now really what that investment has done through those relationships, right? And we had one guest on, Julia. He talked about making investments or making deposits into your relationships. And so you deposit over time, over this stewardship cycle. And then you're starting to see, you're able to kind of take a withdrawal, if you will, in banking terms. And so your return on relationship will go, side by side on your return on investment. may not be as easy to track or to identify. However, what we have seen or heard as well, Julia, I wish I had counted how many of our guests have come on and said, this is a relationship game. And right now, more than ever, instead of asking people for their support, merely ask in that human connection, how are you doing? Right? How are you doing? And just have that connection, that conversation on that human level, because that truly is a part of the solicitation process. It's not an active solicitation. It's not an active request. It is a part of the process of the cultivation, stewardship, the giving cycle, right? So that you really do have to steward that. So that's ROR, return on relationship.
Okay, so let me ask you then a follow-up question, and this is my own question. And so in terms of ROR, when we're looking at budgets, and so many of our nonprofits are now moving into a budgeting season, or they're revising budgeting, all that. Would you say that you could define that and add some costs, whether it be hours or part of the ROR is a birthday card program, or a card that says thank you for joining us a year ago today? Or can you be that specific, or should you, to kind of bring that forward? Or is this just more of like a value and an attitude?
It's all of that, honestly. And I do think that any professional in the nonprofit sector, whether you are a fundraiser or not, this ROR, return on relationship, should be a part of your everyday duty, responsibilities, and tasks. So, it could be, yes, for an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, you're going to have some of those human connection because it builds the support. And when I think of this in a very sophisticated manner, Julia, I think of a moves management cycle, right? So when we think of your CRM or your customer relationship management tool, we're really looking at, okay, where is this donor in the moves management cycle? And there is definitely that cultivation, proposal, solicitation, there's so many in that. So I want to address the fact, Julia, that some organizations will say, my CRM is an Excel spreadsheet. That's okay, right? Others will say, wow, my CRM is the Cadillac version and I've got a black bod, bells and whistles. Wherever you are, I want you to address that as part of your goals. So again, this could be quarterly. It could be how many individuals have you brought into the organization. And this is not only for the CEO and not only for the chief development officer. This is everyone in the organization to know that this is who you are in the community. This is the purpose and mission that you provide. And so I would absolutely put it on your goals and your metrics. And it could look by way of, how much time have you invested? Love those birthday cards. And if it's not, the actual birth date, it could be the anniversary date of that donor or that volunteer. So
okay, thank you. I see that Sasha Lewis has joined us today on this episode as a visitor. And I think maybe what we should do is we should see if she'll come back on and talk to us about adding some of those additional measurements or something, because I think it's a good game to talk about, we need to be, reaching out, and we need to be, more engaged in everything. But I can see where we fall through if we're not actually tracking it. And when you talked about return on relationship, it sounds good, and I think it should be where we need to be. But I can see that we're not actively tracking it. So anyway, okay, thank you very much. Okay, Stephen from St. Louis writes, there are some older folks in our senior development team who use inappropriate language when it comes to being inclusive. While I am younger, and this might be a generational thing, I'm not sure if I should speak up and correct them or just laugh it off. Our nonprofit wants to be inclusive, promote equity, and engage different people. But with this basic thing going on, we will never get there. These are not horrible words. just not smart or best practice vocabulary. Stephen in St. Louis. Wow, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, Stephen. Yeah. And I will address this. I was on a networking call earlier. Maybe it was last night. Again, what day is it? And there was a comedian who came on, and the comedian had some kind of like humor that was self-deprecating, but it was also kind of just against the group thinking, right? And so it really turned some of us off. So I would ask you, Stephen, like you said in your question that your organization wants to be inclusive. But if this is a part of your senior team, I would question that, right? Like, does your organization really want to be inclusive? And what I want to bring up, and I will own that I am not an expert in this realm, and I'm not the expert to talk about this, but there's been a lot of conversation in particular about Black Lives Matters when it comes to making a public statement as your organization. And then there's been even more conversation about going beyond the statement, right? So it's not just the statement itself. It is going beyond that statement to say, okay, you made this public statement, we see it, but what are your actions? And that's exactly what you're talking about here, Stephen. If you've stated, and I even have clients that in their core mission and values, it mentions, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what are you showing the community? What are you doing? What is your senior team? What are all of your team members demonstrating? Not only words, but action.
Right. Okay. That's cool. And I can see this, he says, well, I'm younger, and this might be a generational thing. I can see that. And I can see it, especially when you're the low man on the totem pole. It's hard to speak up like that.
Well, so I'll mention this other example because I do think that it's worth additional timing here, Julia. Another one of my clients has mentioned that she has, it's a food bank, and they have a lot of older and long-serving volunteers that mean well. That's what we say in the South. Oh, they mean well, but they're not quite, what's the word? They're not quite,
or current.
They're not current. And so, and they're not really aware of what they might be saying or doing. And so she wasn't so worried about her staff. She was more worried about the volunteer workforce and having individuals from the food bank come in and feel that kind of like distance there. And so she's invested in training for the volunteer workforce. So it's twofold for the staff as well as the volunteers, but that's a great opportunity, is to address your HR, address your senior team to say, if this is what we believe, what are we doing, right? And how might we also include all groups within our organization, volunteers included.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There's a reason why you're called the nonprofit nerd, my friend. No, that's really great, because I never thought about the front lines and your volunteers. And you're right. I mean, so often we do volunteer training. It's kind of like, this is where the coffee is. This is, where you're
asks.
Yeah, where you're supposed to park, and that's it. We never go deeper. So that's cool. Okay, very good. Okay, Jeff from San Antonio. This is like now a completely different direction. How often should our nonprofit review our organization's bylaws? None of us can remember ever doing it. Our new board chair thinks it's crucial, and yet it will cost us some legal fees to have this work done. Your thoughts?
What are your thoughts, Julia? No. I'm curious your thoughts, because you have served on many boards, and I'll be honest, while I have served on boards, not as many of you as you have, merely for a conflict of interest. So, as a professional fundraiser, so you tell me what has been your experience, and then I'll tell you my nerd answer.
Yeah, I do most of my work in public speaking is around board work. So, Jeff in San Antonio, this is the gig. You should have a board. And Sasha Lewis, by the way, says, of course, she'll come on. Yay, team. Thank you, Sasha. You should have, first of all, you should know where let's back up, where your bylaws are. It is amazing to me how many nonprofits I work with who come with our board boot camps, or we work with them, who don't even know where the board bylaws are. And this is a natural thing, especially for organizations that are older. So you need to make sure you know where they are and you have your hands on the most recent dated bylaws. The other part of this is that there have been a lot of changes legally, and there continue to be, about how nonprofit organizations, 501c3s, C6 and C9s, are governed, and that the compliance issues are changing every day. So you need to have these reviewed. I would say that if you're a board in transition, where meaning your mission has changed, your focus, your outreach, your budgets, you need to be really having this reviewed by an attorney every 2 to 3 years. And that attorney shouldn't be a patent attorney or something like an HR attorney. I mean, attorneys, just like physicians, have specialties. And so there are attorneys that just work within the nonprofit world or nonprofit sectors. The cost of this, depending on the size and scope of your bylaws and how outdated they are, might cost you a little bit more money up front. And then that review, unless you've had some major structural changes, shouldn't cost that much. So you might be looking at a $2,500 investment. Now, if you're a national organization and you have chapters and you have a lot more reach, it's going to cost you more. But if you're a local organization serving well and you don't have any crisis going on, that's probably where you're going to land. You should also plan on a 60 to 75, maybe even 80-day review period. It's not just something that you email over and then you get it right back. I mean, it's going to be something that needs to be thorough, because perhaps you're going to have to make some adjustments in those bylaws so that you come up to full compliance. This is very, very important, because as we navigate forward and your nonprofit has the opportunity maybe to engage in federal contracting, larger grants, or even issues within your community, and you have liability if you work with children, if you work with minors. So child is under the age of 18, minor under the age of 21. You work in healthcare where you have to observe HIPAA. You're going to have more risk. And so those bylaws will be part of that structure that helps your organization. Last but not least, if you are attracting higher level board members that are professionals or coming from Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, chances are those organizations that are sending somebody to represent them are going to want to see those, right? Because they're going to want to know how their board member, and then in extension, how their organization is going to be protected in terms of crisis. So that's kind of a long-winded piece, but
I think you did great, and I would definitely don you right now, Julia, with the nerd glasses. I would absolutely, add to that. Yes, I would add to that. Put it in your budget every few years, right? And as Julia said, every 2 to 3 years. So go ahead and forecast that expense. And realize that this is really a part of sustainability, capacity building, and there could be a way to write that into a grant opportunity to have that funded. But this is really something that you want to take seriously with your organization. It's not an annual review. You may want to truly review it yourself internally, but to have this, looked at over a nonprofit, by a nonprofit attorney, as Julia said, not a patent attorney, or any other, practice of the sort. So put that in as a line item and expect that expense every couple of years.
That's genius. I had not thought of that. Now I must take off my nonprofit nerd glasses and hand them back, because you're right. And he even says on here, it will cost us some legal fees. Yeah. Of course it's going to cost you, but yeah, it should be budgeted.
The cost of doing business.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Nancy from Charlotte writes in, would it be inappropriate to share our Chief Innovation Officer with another nonprofit? We need tech strategies, but with so many cutbacks, I'm not sure if I should let this talent go or find another nonprofit to job share with.
Oh, I love the job share conversation. I really do. And I do think that over this course of the pandemic, that has definitely been, a top conversation. I would say for me, I get this question asked a lot as a consultant is, are you working with other nonprofits at the time? Are you working with other nonprofits in the same sector? So are you working with two food banks at the same time? And for me, as a contractor, as a professional consultant, it's what's in my contract that will say, my contract agreement, right, is that it's not exclusive. It's not an exclusive relationship. However, there's definitely, ethical practices in place. And so I subscribe to the Association of Fundraising Professionals, which means everything that's in my head by way of donor capacity and past giving history, I do not take that on to the next client. I do not share that information. Now, how do you trust that? It's a gut thing. You have to trust, you have to be willing to trust the professional in which you're hiring. So Julia, I get this question a lot, and I would say if this is a true employee, there may be some more boundaries in place that you can exercise. However, as a contract employee, those are some of the additional, regulations that you really don't have authority to govern. So as a contract employee, right, some of the biggest things that I enjoy is that, you don't set our hours, you don't set how we do the work, you don't set where we do the work. So those are some of the, additions when it comes to a contractor. But when it comes to a true employee, there may be some different regulations and, to consider.
Right. And, I think that that's one of those things like that Katie Warnick from Staffing Boutique has mentioned. There are documents, there are value sets, there are, operating practices that you can have that go across your organization, just as you would if you're dealing with, children, minors, or medical. That could go into that so that you're not going to be fearful that your data is going to be taken or, yeah. But I think that's kind of an interesting thing, and good for you, Jamie, and not, who was that? Oops, sorry. Nancy in Charlotte. Thank you. Because that's cool. She needs to write back to us and tell us how it worked out.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is a hoot, and this is somewhat self-serving, but I think this is hilarious. I shouldn't say it's hilarious, but it's really good. Name withheld from Las Vegas. Okay, not that many people live in Las Vegas. We could probably figure out who wrote this. How do I get myself on the nonprofit show? I am a consultant who specializes in strategic planning for nonprofits, and I have a lot of ideas that could be quite helpful.
Well, Nonprofit Withheld, we are always seeking talent. We are always seeking experts. Julia and I are often tapping into our own colleague circles. While we happen to be physically in Arizona as, a raving fan of our show, Name Withheld in Las Vegas, we bring in experts from across the nation. So we do ask for anyone who is watching, listening, or watching the archive, reach out to us, and in fact, we just had another organization that had been a previous guest on the show reach out to us and say, hey, we would love to go on your show again to talk about fill in the blank. So absolutely. And Julia, we have an executive team behind the scenes. Kevin is definitely a part of that as the executive producer now. So what say you?
Email us. You can email me directly, jcp@americannonprofitacademy.com or info at americannonprofitacademy.com. We have, we only have 5 days a week, and our space fills up. We try and reach all the different sectors. There are 9 major philanthropic sectors that cover with 9 major topics. So we try and, tick off those boxes. But definitely reach out to us. We're always looking, to get different views. You don't have to agree with us. We don't have to agree with you. But basically, we schedule it in, and yeah, that's what this is about. It's about building community and trying to get different people.
Well, in that breath, Julia, I would also love to say, self-serving, those of you that are watching and have been avid viewers, if there's someone you want to hear from, if there's someone in which we can use our platform to tap into their expertise, reach out to us and let us know. We are more than happy to reach out to some of these experts. Julie and I use this as a great opportunity to really, bridge that conversation with experts that we may not have been able to get on the phone, but using this platform as a national, nonprofit webcast, we do have quite an appealing audience. And so you as raving fans, if there's someone you want us to bring on as a guest, if there's someone you're dying to hear from, let us know.
Yeah. Or maybe even like a product or, a process that maybe you know about. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're all about. Okay, Joanna from Cleveland. Thank you. Name withheld from Vegas. I can't wait to see if they reach out. Okay, Joanna in Cleveland. What is the number of board members to have on our board? We have some folks who think we need to expand our number. Others think we need to make it smaller. I'm not sure in either direction, but I want to educate myself on the best practice of nonprofit board sizes.
So I'll be quick in this because I'm looking at our time here and I know we're short. So that really depends on your bylaws. So going back to your bylaws, that conversation that we just had earlier in the show, I would definitely say no less than 5. And I have been on boards with 20 plus. So I always recommend an odd number for the voting purposes. And, I do think that the size of the organization or the size of the board really is determined by where you are as a nonprofit. How evolved are you as a nonprofit? Are you still in kind of a startup phase? Are you at maturity level? And I'm speaking to that when it comes to the life cycles of nonprofits. But I really think, your board will grow and evolve as your organization grows, evolves, and matures. So no less than 5. And again, I've been a part of 20 plus.
Yeah. There are many different types of boards. You can have a working board, you can have a show board, an honorary board, emeritus board, young professionals. I think you need to understand it exactly to Jarrett's point. What is your board tasked to do? What are some of their future tasks going to be? What does the trajectory of the organization look like? Because understanding what your talent you're going to need. Is your board composition diverse enough? Is it inclusive enough? I mean, that's a big issue. And there are people that go out across this country and actually do, help in that board cultivation and understanding what you need. So, hey, Jarrett, amazing, amazing time. I mean, it even goes by fast for us. I mean, that's crazy.
It does. Yeah.
I mean,
happy Friday to everyone.
No, I know. Here's our information. Again, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We want to thank our presenting sponsors so much for making this possible. We are so, so appreciative of your work. Jarrett Ransom, obviously you are the nonprofit nerd. I think this is my favorite day because you don't necessarily know what these questions are going to be.
No, you've read them in advance.
Yeah, I've read them, but I mean, my team puts them together, so I don't always really know like where they're going to show up, in all fairness. But yeah, so I'm always like, it's kind of like stump the chump, as they say. Not that you're a chump.
Oh, thank you.
All right, everybody, thanks so much. It's been another great week. We hope you have a restful weekend. As we like to end, oh my goodness, stay well so you can do well. We need your work in our world. It's super important now more than ever. We need our nonprofits to be strong. So have a wonderful week. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Bye, everyone. See you Monday.
Thank you.